EA Sports and the PGA Tour proudly present the season-long race for the FedEx Cup.
Golf. It's one of those age-old and wonderful sports which encapsulates everybody, young, old, male or female, and it's played across the world. It requires skill, accuracy, and a healthy dose of bravery, especially if you want to walk away with the top prize. Unfortunately, EA Sports' eagerly awaited PGA Tour is an overpriced, overhyped EA money spinning tool which lacks depth, content, stability, and quality across the board. I urge you to watch this review in full before you decide to buy this game. Here at 𝗬𝘂𝗯𝘀, we are unlike any other YouTube channel you will have seen. We are not influencers. We review games honestly. We will tell you all the best parts and all the worst parts of every game we review, because our allegiance is to you, the buyer, and not the developers. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and if you can afford it, please think about sharing just a small donation to help support the channel. Thank you and enjoy the review.
Situated high on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean, what a golf course, Torrey Pines, and what a weekend we should have in store as we look at the leaderboard here in round one.
EA Sports' last golf game release was Rory McIlroy's PGA Tour back in 2015. That's nearly 10 years ago. Since then, the license has been taken over by HB Studios with their PGA Tour 2K series, and this is EA Sports' big golf comeback. Well, they do need a way to refill those FIFA coffers, don't they? And it looks like this might be it.
But let's talk about our featured golfer here. Things didn't go so well out in the desert. It was a missed cut at PGA West. What would your advice be for how to attack things this week?
Well, first and foremost, every great player, or every player that I've known over the history of this game has trunk slammed it more than once in their career. You put those clubs in the car and drive to your next event, try and change the mojo, get rid of the bad vibes. But this is a stern test this week. This is enough to get the concentration back. But, you know, I'm going to say this many a time in their career. You've got to hit the reset button. And this is the time, too, because the golf course demands too much out of you. Yesterday, last week, is long gone.
I've played golf for pretty much all of my life, and I use the knowledge that I have acquired in that time to compare golf games to the real thing. Right, so if we go 8 iron, I said this to you before, it should travel on about the same distance again. So that's half and half again. So 8 yards, 19 yards. This should be very close. I did warn you. I like this. This is kind of cool. I told you guys, 8 iron. All the way, baby. I only play golf games in career mode on maximum difficulty. That means the AI are set to 100%, all assists and HUD elements are turned off, and all shot mechanics are set at their maximum simulation difficulty level. If you're the kind of player who prefers playing arcade style and super casual instead of realistic, with the assists and the fanfare turned on, then there are going to be elements of this review which probably won't make that much sense to you. Thankfully though, for the likes of me, in EA Sports PGA Tour you can set the game up to be something close to a simulation experience. In fact, there are a number of positives that I have found in the game, and I'd like to discuss those with you first. If you're old enough to be able to look back and remember the Tiger Woods golf era games fondly, then you will have a fairly decent appreciation for what PGA Tour is going to look and feel like. Because in typical EA Sports rinse and repeat style, it really hasn't changed that much. Except we do now have loot boxes and microtransactions. So the game currently for the cheapest version is £59.99 or $69.99. It's developed obviously by EA Sports and released on April 7th, 2023. You can play the game on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS and PC. It very much seems to me that this is a PlayStation port to PC, which means that all the controller button requests are still for the PlayStation controllers. There's no Xbox controllers here, and there are some serious keyboard and mouse issues as well. On PC at the moment, the 3-click mouse shot technique is not currently available, but that has been touted to come after release, and I'm sure that will please many of you. So it would be unfair to say that there are absolutely no pros to the PGA Tour game, because there are many pros. PGA Tour looks really quite nice. I wouldn't say it's overly spectacular. I've noticed that in my recorded gameplay, everything looks really quite bleached. Even in normal gameplay, the lighting and the colour seems slightly off, and it can be overpowering at times.
And that will do just fine.
The game is heavily licensed. They have managed to secure both the Augusta National and the Masters, and there are approximately 30 other PGA venue courses which are all pretty well detailed, with more set to come after release. Of course, there are many top-named players whose likenesses are relatively accurate, and a strong attempt has been made to capture their accurate swing animations too. There's a healthy dose of top brand equipment manufacturers in the game, as you would expect. Career mode is the meat for a sports game like this, and here it has been done quite well in the Road to the Masters career scenario, which may sound familiar to some of you. You have the ability to switch and change your preferences in order to suit your chosen pace, depth, difficulty, and gameplay style. You can turn on or off AI pairing, which is a feature I actually like a great deal. It helps me to pace the gameplay a little bit. Although you do have to be quite patient with them, because sometimes they do take a long time to pick their shot.
This one should cut pretty hard to his left. It's for birdie. Oh yeah, bottom of the barrel for birdie here at 18. And that will write an end to the round here today.
Of course, I play 100% of my holes and rounds. I don't skip or miss out on any of them. But if you prefer to, you can opt to play just a few selected holes, or you can have the AI take some of your shots for you with a bit of a penalty, which means you can skip rounds and just push yourself through into the final two, if that's what you want to do. The career includes all 4 majors and the usual other picks that you would expect in a season, and your character skills can be unlocked and adjusted over a period of time, or, if you're really impatient, you can purchase in-game coins for real money and take a shortcut. Character skills and unlocks will influence your shot accuracy, your power, your luck, and more. If, like me, you prefer to play at a realistic pace, then the commentary is a nice pacer, and the PGA Tour TV coverage looks to add to the realism for me.
Yeah, well done. It's a birdie here at the second.
The commentary is pretty decent, if a little repetitive at times, and I highly recommend that you do not trust the shot advice that the commentators provide for you. There are quite a few other gameplay options available to you as well. There's quick game, training, sponsorship, minigames, and numerous challenges, some with 1 versus 1 against some of the pros, and some historical moments that you can relive and try and recreate yourself. There are daily, weekly, and seasonal online tournaments available to you, and new, as yet untested by myself, 16-player online mode, which sounds quite interesting, I have to say. It has some cool little features as well that add to the immersion, like a heartbeat moment when a long shot is running close, but to be honest, it doesn't really happen or fire nearly often enough. The new shot mechanic called Pure Strike is unique, and is combined with the trackman physics, which together provide something of a problematic situation. Mostly because it's not explained at all in any of the tutorials. Often shots feel erratic, unreliable, and despite the shot link data feedback, at times your consistency is not rewarded, and often just serves to confirm that the results are somewhat unreliable. The game boasts some 20 different shot types and is backed up with new, improved animation. The jury is still out, I have to say, on whether or not this new system is better or not, partly because I still haven't 100% figured out everything about it, and also because there appear to be quite a few bugs in the game which are seriously impacting on the overall experience that this is providing. Right, I'm curious. I've dragged that all the way down to 9 yards. I'm going to hit it full pelt. Let's see where it goes. So it does. By dragging that thing towards you, it reduces your power. It never explains that in the game. That's a total game changer. Okay. So now I know how to control my power more accurately. So if I now put it there. So unlike conventional golf games, your shot power is directed by the club choice and shot type that you select, and then the overall power is set by moving the aiming circle. Usually that's just an information tool to help you adjust your swing accordingly. But now that is not how the swing works. Instead of reducing the speed or pull back in your shot by 50% to lower the power of your shot, the overall power is adjusted by moving that circle. Your backswing and follow through now have pace modifiers which give you fine motor controls. And sometimes it's kind of cool. You can put that little bit of extra power in, or a little bit of resistance or additional height to just try and control the ball that little bit more. But effectively, you lack the ability to shape and control your shot as realistically as you normally can, because every shot you play should be 100% if you have placed that aiming circle in the correct location. So that means that you no longer need to work out how much pullback or speed you need to gauge in order to get the right power for your shot. So there's a long list of cons, and I'll try and get through them as quickly as possible. Let's start with the price. Now, price is always subjective. To some, £60 is nothing. But for me, £60 makes PGA Tour the most expensive golf game that I have ever bought. Now, if it was completely groundbreaking, then okay. But it really isn't. In fact, if anything, it's quite lacking in quite a few areas. Of course, we have an in-game purchasing option now, where you can buy in-game coins with real money to buy equipment, perks, gain tournament entry, and clothing, etc, etc, etc. We have new blind rewards, or loot boxes if you will, and you open those up and get some rewards back for your hard work or extra money that you've spent. I noticed that there is a deliberate lack of purchasable items in the game to start with, and this is there to encourage you to spend more money. One example of this is that you start off with absolutely zero hats, and a very poor selection of t-shirts and trousers and shoes. This game has all the hallmarks of a PS5 port to PC, and at this price, that's simply not acceptable. The controller is clearly configured to work on PlayStation. All of the on-screen prompts are for the PlayStation. Now, I've mentioned already that the 3-click shot technique is set to follow after release, but you cannot rebind any buttons on your controller or keyboard keys either. You can, however, switch between using the left or right thumbstick in order to control your swing.
And that is not the worst shot in the world, but obviously could have been better.
Certainly. Definitely hoping to try and get inside 3 feet, but it's a little outside that.
I found that the menus feel slow and laggy. This is very much an EA thing. And the mouse being on the screen is causing an issue when you're trying to use a controller. Sometimes the mouse, if you move it off the screen, will respawn in the middle of the screen. And what that does is it takes the focus away from the controller. So the mouse and the controller actively start fighting against each other.
Yeah, that's well done, though it is for bogey here at the par 3.
The graphical setting options are very limited indeed. They are extremely basic, and the reason for that is because it looks as though it's been hard-baked to work in one particular way to suit the PS5, and they don't want anyone changing any of the settings. That shouldn't be the case in the PC, but because it's a port, and it's a very lazy port at best, that is what we have got. As such, performance is quite poor. If you want to play in 4K, for example, despite the game being locked at 30 frames per second, the performance is pretty despicable. In 2K, I found it to be much better, but there are still many performance-related issues. You will experience slowdowns, glitches, and stutters. Now, this is not necessarily a huge issue, except it's really bad when you're taking a crucial precision shot and you get a micro stutter that causes you to overshoot or underhit your shot. Sometimes if you're playing alongside the AI, which is a feature I do actually like very much, the AI will take an incredibly long time to choose their shot. There's no sort of informative way of knowing that that's what they're doing, they just stand perfectly still, and for me at least, it looks like the game has just crashed. I did have one crash actually, and this happened when I was trying to change the screen resolution mid-round.
All right, Frank, second shot.
Yeah, it looks like a good lie. Just take maybe half a club more than the distance allows. Still got to check the wind. Don't have to fly the ball all the way to the flag from here.
Now, I could be wrong, I haven't actually heard much about this or figured out what the problem is, but there seems to be some sort of, possibly, HDR graphics issue which is causing much of the game to look washed out or oversaturated. Certainly the lighting in-game is less than perfect. Speaking of things that are less than perfect, the character creation is very limited and very basic at best. Do you remember the face building tools that we had in Tiger Woods back in the day, some 10-15 years ago? I was actually once able to create such an incredibly close likeness to a friend of ours that we had to take photos of the two of them next to each other just because the tools were so effective. To be fair, I only ever managed to create one likeness that was that good, and I've never been able to do it since. But certainly we were able to create something that looked quite like us. Well, that's all gone. It's been replaced with approximately 20 pre-created faces, and I can confirm that none of them look anything like me. You can also create female players in the game, but as mentioned, the LPGA appears to be missing. There's no confirmation that this is going to be included at a later date, or not for that matter, so it's critical for me that they have included his and her pronouns, but not managed to include any actual female golfing options. So the chances are, for the time being at least, if you are female and playing as a female, then you will be playing against the men. There are some other strange choices that have been made in the game. For example, if you're playing in a career and you want to adjust your loadout or change your clothes or your outfit or anything like that, you have to actually exit the career mode, go back to the main menu, and from there you're able to upgrade your player, change your loadouts and your outfits. This is just poor UI design, and any basic university graduate would not have accepted this. So it's incredibly confusing why EA continue to produce such terrible menus. Now, as I've mentioned briefly, player skills and ranking up over time is something you can achieve through playing and completing quests. You can also do it by purchasing certain items, and through loot box rewards you can gain additional equipment as well. Now, one of the things that really frustrates me is that some of the shots, some very basic general shots that any golfer will have used, are not available to you until you unlock them. One example of this is putting from the fringe of a green, something which I'm sure 90% or more people have done whilst playing golf, but unfortunately the game has decided to lock that ability away from you until you have played long enough to unlock it. There are many other issues that I can mention before we actually get to the key problems in the gameplay. The tutorials, for example, are really poor. They consist mostly of repetition and self-learning. They don't explain the new mechanics at all, and that's a problem because the game does do things quite differently, and nowhere have I seen any sort of confirmation to explain how these systems work. For example, the power being adjusted with the aim marker and not the actual swing. So if you're trying to hit a 50% power shot by not pulling back 100% of your backswing, then you're going to be completely confused as to why you're not getting the results that you expect to get. Again, the same thing applies with the small micro adjustments which are now available with shot power and tempo. So there are no actual tutorials that I can speak of, just practice, challenges, etc. And there's no voice-over tutorials at all, and I think that's absolutely disgraceful at this price by a company this big. Other strange decisions have been placed. Triple bogeys. That's the maximum limit you can get on any hole. Now, when you're first starting out, that's something you might well be thankful of. But really, I feel like this should be an option that you can turn on or off. As I understand it, unless things have changed, the maximum amount of shots that you record on a golf course are 10 shots per hole, which obviously would completely wipe out your round. But unfortunately, that does happen sometimes. Furthermore, there are absolutely no replays that I've noticed, at least. You play an incredible shot, pulling off a tight fade round a tree onto the green and put it either in the hole or damn close to the hole, and you're like, wow, that was spectacular. And there are times where things like that do happen, of course, but you'll never see it again, not unless you're recording the gameplay footage, because there are no replays at all. Equally, if you take a long putt from 50 yards and it ends up 1 inch from the hole, there are no tap-ins. You'll have to play that shot and you'll have to wait your turn to be able to do it. Overall, I find the new physics to be incredibly poor. They don't look or feel particularly realistic. There is a lot of hyperbole around the fact that each course is meant to have certain true-to-life characteristics depending on altitude, location, ground type, etc, etc, etc. And perhaps they do, but the physics, I feel, are so unrealistic, even on the most basic of courses, that it makes little difference on any of the others. There are many times where a ball will just roll and roll and roll in a way that doesn't seem or look realistic at all. Wind influence is another strange thing. There is no wind speed mentioned anywhere at all. All you have is an arrow, and you have to kind of figure it out. Now, in the real world, you can actually feel the wind against your face or your finger, and you can see the trees blowing, etc. But none of that is actually available here. So if there's a strong gust of wind, you will basically have no idea if your shot went wildly off to the left because of the wind, or because of some other unknown feature which you have yet to figure out. Furthermore, whilst we're talking about data and information, everything seems to be measured in degrees instead of elevation. So you're trying to make a putt or a shot from a certain distance away, and the tee is, say, 2 foot above you. Rather than saying 2 foot above you, it will say it is 0.1 degrees above you. Quite often, this information is either inaccurate or completely missing as well, which makes things even more difficult. But the problem here is that 0.1 degree elevation means two very different things depending how far away you are from the tee itself. And effectively, it is almost completely flipping useless. There are more problems with that, which I'll discuss in a moment. Now, the in-game audio on the most part is okay. I don't really have any complaints about it. It doesn't blow me away, it certainly isn't immersive, but it is good enough. Sometimes, though, I have experienced that the audio is only coming through one ear. Now, this only seems to happen briefly for 5 seconds or less, and then it returns to normal. So I class this as nothing more than an annoying bug, but there are quite a few of these annoying bugs. So ambient audio on the most part is acceptable. In fact, I'd say it was quite good. I like the way that the crowd quietened down as you approach the ball. That definitely does add a little bit to the immersion. The same can't be said for the commentators though, and I say this laughingly because I don't mind that so much, but they do sometimes prattle on when you really wish they would just be quiet for a moment so you could concentrate on taking your shot. What bothers me more though are the additional commentators who have clearly recorded their voiceovers on completely different mics at a different volume in a different location, and all it does is sound incredibly unprofessional, very half-assed, and again, I reiterate, at this price, that's not acceptable. So let's get to the crux of the issue in this game. It's the gameplay itself. First of all, the in-game camera angles are limited and terrible. I have a number of times been completely blocked by the camera, so I'm having to play entirely blind shots. There is no way to change or move or transition the camera at all. And I find the fact that you cannot even adjust your camera position until you have selected to take your shot further compounds the problem. Things get even worse for maximum difficulty players, as you don't have the zoom in feature available to you. As such, with the limited number of camera angles that are available to you, you literally cannot see your shot because there's a tree in front of you or a hill in front of you, or the lie of the land just isn't really particularly forgiving, and you just cannot figure out where you should be hitting the ball. You can, of course, switch to the whole overview map and look for things above you, and there's even a button that allows you to remove the HUD markers that indicate certain distances along the hole. But unfortunately, what that doesn't remove is the massive, and I do mean massive, opponent marker, which is probably the thing that is causing you the most amount of difficulty, because it blocks so much of the view. You literally cannot see A, where you are, or B, where you're trying to aim your shot. The markers are so big they quite often cover the entirety of the green. Speaking of greens, one of the most infuriating things and most inconsistent things that I have found is the putting. Green undulation information is at best very poor. It effectively consists of a combination of white and almost white grey and occasionally blue or red squares. But no matter how it's configured or how the lie of the green looks or is meant to be, it always looks completely flat. It very rarely looks like there are any undulations at all. Even when you've played long enough and you have learnt to be able to detect if a break is going to happen, it is still almost impossible to identify which way the break will occur, whether it's going to break to the left or the right. This kind of brings me back to the chip shot issue with the circle, which now controls the power of your shot. If you're trying to play a 50% chip shot, it's almost impossible to play that accurately until you have learnt that new shot power management technique which is required. But the tutorials literally do not cover this, and you have to fail multiple times over until you get some luck. Now, if you're playing with arcade mode rather than simulation mode, this probably isn't going to affect you half as much. I wouldn't know. I have no interest in playing that way. But for the more realistic players, there is literally no information available to you that's of any use to you half the time. Now, even when you do play long enough and you start to work out pretty much how everything works, you will still suffer inconsistent shots for some unknown reason. Now, the reason why this happens is not 100% certain, but I suspect, having played for quite a few hours now, it's probably because your rank is not sufficient enough for you to be consistent. Now, that means even if you are actually being consistent and you're playing a good straight shot every single time, playing the exact identical shot over and over and over again, sometimes, because your rank isn't high enough, you will be given an inconsistent shot, even if you're not being inconsistent. This is an arcade implementation to make games harder than they are in real life, and it can be incredibly frustrating. The most frustrating thing is that we really don't know for sure if that's what is happening because of the lack of clarity surrounding the new shot mechanics. Now, if you want to upgrade your character, you can always take a shortcut and buy some coins with real money and upgrade yourself faster. And the final thing I want to talk about before I wrap this up, and I'm just going to basically say bugs, so many bugs. There are so many bugs, more than I could possibly capture and list to you, and depending on what format you're playing this game on, there are different bugs and a different number of bugs. But just a couple to whet your appetite. The incorrect hole lay information is displayed constantly, making shot choice much harder than it should be. Now, arguably, this is a good thing for realism, but as this is a game and not real life, depth perception does need a little bit of assistance, so that's a bug that they desperately need to fix. Often the information provided to you is incorrect, or there's no hole height information at all, which is especially annoying when you're putting. And then there's the left glove, right glove bug, which I find to be quite funny, but just a silly bug that they've let go through. There are other bugs as well, profile data deletion bugs, where your character's information can just be wiped out in a moment's notice. You get the idea. There's a few bugs in the game. I think on the most part, they can get fixed and resolved in a relatively small amount of time. The problems really are around the clarity behind the new shot mechanics, the poor physics, and fundamentally the lack of quality and content for such a high price, especially when they're trying to get you to pay even more money to shortcut all of the shortcomings in the game. So basically they are making the game harder for you to play, no matter how good you are as a player, in order to encourage you to spend more money on buying in-game coins in order to be able to play the game in a far more realistic and fair manner. Now, that to me sounds incredibly outrageous, and it's something that I cannot possibly condone. Having said that, the experience that I've had playing the career If you put the bugs and the issues aside, and I think given a couple of weeks or a month or two, all of those bugs should be ironed out. I have really genuinely enjoyed my golfing experience. The problem here is that the price is too high, the quality is lacking, the depth is simply not there, and furthermore, we have the microtransactions and all the additional problems that come with that as well. I highly urge you to go and download the EA app and either buy the EA Play Pass or Microsoft's Game Pass. Either of those two options will enable you to get 10 hours of gameplay time. And this is a shout out to Steam. This is something I've said many times over. Steam's 2-hour try before you buy and you can refund option is simply not long enough, especially for a game like this where a single round can take you 2 hours. So I do commend EA for giving us 10 hours of free try before you buy time. Admittedly, you do have to have a subscription in order to get access to that, but 10 hours is certainly enough time to get your teeth into this game and find out whether or not it is the right game for you. Hopefully it's hopefully the information I provided in this review is useful to you and will help you to decide on whether or not to make a purchase here. If you need more information, feel free to go check out 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝐴, where we've got approximately 10 hours of gameplay, unedited gameplay, where I just play the game and try and experience it as realistically and honestly and genuinely as I can. I'm not trying to sell you the game. I'm not trying to put you off buying the game per se. I'm just warning you of all the pros and cons that you will face if you choose to buy the game right now at this price. I suspect that if you can be patient enough to wait till after the summer, maybe even as long as Christmas, then you will be able to pick this game up at a fraction of the cost it is right now. And maybe then all the bugs will be fixed and more content will be made available as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button, subscribe, and if you'd like to see more, please do come and check out 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝐴. Thank you. Goodbye for now. Gone a bit right.
Okay, just a little right of the flag on the front portion of this green and a birdie putt coming up. Gonna have to take pretty much a full swing at this one with the putter because this one is into the hill and the hole is cut back. Oh, dude, that. What a roll that was. A long one in for birdie.
No replay.
A brief ray of sunshine in what has been a difficult tournament.